I believe very strongly that we're going to be better than we were coming out of this. So, but we have to kind of do the hard work to get there.
Hi, and welcome to the program today. I'm Kevin Coleman with Bellingham Now, and I'm very excited to have our next guest on, Mr. Greg Hansen. He is the mayor of Ferndale. He acquired the position in January of this year after winning the election last year. And since then, there's a lot of things that are happening in the Ferndale area. And so we're here to have Greg on. And Greg, I welcome you. Tell us what's happening in Ferndale.
It's certainly not what I expected when I ran for mayor. And, I originally, I ran for mayor to learn a little something about myself, learn a lot about my community. I've been an instructor at Whatcom Community College for 15 years, and I've been like a lifelong learner. And so I really looked at the opportunity to run for mayor as an opportunity to learn what it's like to run a small city campaign, and kind of exercise that learning gene in me. And lo and behold, I won. I felt like I was well prepared, but this all started off as an opportunity to learn something. And so, walking into the mayor's role, I looked at it with the same philosophy, that this is an amazing opportunity to learn something that I would never be able to learn in any other way. Little did I know that this was going to be the learning experience of a lifetime. I got way more than I had ever expected out of this. And I've only been doing this for 6 months, not even 6 months. And so, it's been quite a ride. Sometimes you don't get a choice in the challenges that are put in front of you. You just, you deal with what's in front of you and hope that you're making the right choices.
No, that's great to hear. And I know that since everything's happened with COVID, there's been some big changes with just from lockdowns to changes in economic structure of what's happening in Ferndale with jobs and the Talco and everything else.
Yeah.
And that's really going to affect a lot of people long term. How do you see things changing with this pandemic? I mean, just now 6 months and into the next year.
There's a lot of things that it's really kind of hard to figure out, how that's going to impact Ferndale. So, I mean, one of the biggest things is you allude to the curtailment of Alcoa's Intalco smelter out here, where a large portion of the people that work at Intalco are Ferndale residents, and so. We know for sure that there's going to be impacts to our community, but we don't know exactly what those impacts are going to look like. We can guess, we can ask a lot of questions, but we really just have to live through it and respond to the changes that we see in our community. One of the biggest things is just trying to figure out, how do we support those families? There's going to be not just the 700 employees from Intalco, but there's the multiplier. There's all the other businesses and organizations that rely on work at Intalco for their livelihood. And so, there's a great concern for how this is really going to impact our community. I grew up in Ferndale. I'm a Ferndale kid, and I think one of the things that we always look to in Ferndale is that we're a strong community. It's a strong people, proud people. We all very proud of the things that we make, the things that we do here in Ferndale, and we know that as tough as this is going to be, that we are going to make it through this, and we're going to do everything we have to do to support those people, and we will be stronger coming out the other end. But boy, it sure looks difficult from where we're standing today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a slow road. It's a slow road to recovery, and we're not even getting to phase 2 yet.
We're looking around, trying to assess what the economic damage is going to be of the COVID pandemic and the quarantine that's been required in order to deal with the pandemic. And Ferndale was on the cusp of a renaissance here. We had some cool new restaurants. We had some other businesses and shops that were locating downtown. We had some sizable investment taking place in the downtown core, and then COVID hit. Some of our restaurants have figured out how to make it work. We have a relatively new brewery in town that was kind of starting to get a great head of steam, and then all of a sudden everything just comes to a stop. And a lot of these businesses have figured out what to do to stay viable during this time, but we still don't know what the future holds. I mean, are they going to be able to hang on through the summer, and what is it going to look like? And what does that do to the renaissance that we were starting to see? I mean, we're concerned that some of the investment that was planned, in January and February may not happen the way that we expected it to come July and August. And so, a lot of what we're doing, on that front is just kind of hanging on and waiting and trying to figure out what the city can do to try to help facilitate these investments to continue in our town. There's a lot of really cool stuff about Ferndale, and the hope is that we can maintain all of that and build on that as we kind of come out of this pandemic and come out of the economic crisis that we're in. And I believe very strongly that we're going to be better than we were coming out of this. So, but we have to kind of do the hard work to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that there's a number of investment projects that were going to be happening, and I know of 3 of them that were going to be happening in the Main Street area. Have those been postponed, or have they been on hold, or how's that looking?
Well, so they haven't been postponed. So I think what you're talking about is the Catalyst projects.
Yes.
And
yes.
so I don't know, do you want me to give you a little bit of background?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah,
sure.
People would like to know that.
Okay, so back in 2019, as a council member, I and my fellow council members in the city administration put forward an idea we called Catalyst. And the idea here was that we know that for whatever reason, people weren't investing in the downtown core. And, we're talking about Main Street and the blocks on either side of Main Street, just for the 3 or 4 city blocks. And so when we really started thinking about why people aren't investing downtown, one of the things that we came to realize is that it's just a lot more expensive to invest in downtown. Part of it is in a floodplain, so that means you have to build out of the floodplain. Part of it's it's a busy road. It costs more because you're going to have to either retrofit old buildings, or you're going to have to raise them and build new. And so we came up with the Catalyst program, and what the program does is essentially it waives most of the city fees connected with developing in the downtown. So plan development, or plans examination fees, and traffic impact fees, and water and sewer connection fees, what have you. It ends up becoming about 10% of the gross cost of a project, but that's enough to make it a worthwhile investment. So we made it a competitive process. We're only going to provide these discounts for 3 projects. And then there were some minimums. It had to have 5,000 square feet of commercial space at the ground floor. It had to have a minimum of 15 housing units above. And, so we were really trying to, go after a very specific kind of investment. Well, we ended up with 3 projects that applied for the Catalyst, and there were 3 substantial projects. One is about 120 units, one was about 50 units, and one was about 30 units. And the biggest one, called Fountain Plaza, is right there at the entrance of downtown, right on the Riverwalk. So right next to the river, right next to downtown, 120 units with a little over 10,000 square feet of commercial space right there on the ground floor. And the idea is that these projects would be the catalyst for further investment in downtown. So we approved those 3 projects at the end of the year, and coming into 2020, those projects were working their way through the process. And so, working through design and other things. I mean, when you build right next to the river, there are some critical areas. You're building on the waterfront, those sorts of things. So some hoops to jump through to get there, and so, as far as we know, those projects are still on track. and they are kind of doing all the background work. The pandemic didn't close down a lot of those functions, and so architects and others are still able to continue to work, and so they're continuing to work on those projects. We are looking at the possibility of possibly extending their timeline a little bit, simply because because of the pandemic, some things have just taken longer. In the interest of trying to see these projects actually happen, we're looking at the possibility of extending the deadline a little bit. But we still are holding out hopes that these projects will move forward. And the end result would be over 200 new residents in the downtown core, which supports those restaurants and supports that brewery and those gift shops and all the other things that kind of create a village in the downtown core. And that's what we've been looking for a generation, maybe 2 generations.
Yeah, and I think that's great, Greg. I really do. I'm excited about that project because I did hear about it, and I think it's a great project that could really help the downtown area and actually help Ferndale in general.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean,
Yeah.
having grown up in Ferndale, I remember a time when you could do all your shopping downtown.
Right.
And right around the beginning of the year in 2019, a year ago, I counted 23 buildings or 23 storefronts that were closed in the downtown core. So, clearly there's a disconnect between what the residents want out of downtown Ferndale and what's being offered. And we're hoping that the Catalyst projects will kind of, start things moving in the downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. I also know too that the Ferndale High School is going to be rebuilt too. And
Yeah.
I saw plans for that.
Yeah.
That's exciting because they need a new high school, but it's also very state of the art, and it's not that far from downtown. So I think with that synergy, you might be able to create some new buzz for Ferndale.
Absolutely, yeah. There's some other things happening that aren't quite as exciting, but are really necessary for a city like Ferndale to continue to grow. So, we're investing $30 million in a sewer treatment plant. I know it's not sexy, but man, when you flush the toilet, you want that water to go away. And so, we're investing in that. But we also drilled a new well for water that is, it's over 1,000 feet into a new aquifer that, as far as we know, and we've done all the testing, is tapped into a new water source for the region. And interestingly, we just turned that well on Saturday. Friday, sorry. So Friday at noon, we started pumping water out of our 1,000-foot well, and it's currently being mixed with city water. And so, those are the things that aren't that sexy, but they really are an absolute requirement if a city is going to continue to grow. And, we are going to continue to grow. Ferndale's been one of the fastest growing cities outside of King County for a number of years now.
Yeah. Since you're new mayor, what have you learned about the city, and what have you learned about people during this time, good, bad, or indifferent? What have you learned?
Oh my gosh, a lot. I think one of the things that I've learned as a new mayor, I was a council member before, so I knew what I was getting myself into, and I knew, the city staff and the people that I'd be working with as mayor. What I didn't realize is how incredibly, dedicated they all are, but also just crazy smart. There are some incredibly smart people that are working here for the city on a lot of different levels. And I think one of the things I learned really quickly is, as mayor, my job is to ask questions, listen to the answers, and then try to make the best decision possible. I've got some just incredibly smart people around me, and so all I really have to do is rely on them to kind of advise me on what the right thing to do is, and then just do it. Sometimes as a leader, that's a hard thing to do, is to kind of give that up, and just say, I'm going to listen to you. You tell me what you think is the best way to go, and then just go with it.
Right.
And so, I think that's one of the things that I've learned is to in some ways let go, and you're going to make better decisions that way.
Yeah.
Clearly learned a lot about myself. I thought I was going to get a good 6 months to a year's worth of honeymoon period as a mayor. I got about 2.5 months. And then all of a sudden it's like, the reality is right in your face. And there were some really serious consequential decisions that had to be made. I don't know that I felt like I was prepared for it at the time. I look back, and it's funny thinking, I look back 3 months ago and they were clearly the right decisions to make, but really difficult at the time. And, I learned that, I have that ability, right?
Mm-hmm.
That I actually have the ability to make those difficult decisions. When I guess my first weeks in office, there was a little bit of unsurety. Am I really ready for this? And I know I won the election, but is this where I should be? And I think looking back on it now, this is where I should be. I feel like the vast majority of the citizens respect the decisions that I've had to make. Not necessarily agree, but they understand. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like I've grown a lot as an individual, and I didn't know that I had that capacity.
That's awesome. That's really awesome, Greg.
Yeah.
If you could leave people with a thought or message from the interview today, what would that be?
I think the thing that I would like to see most out of my community, and not just my community, Ferndale, but my community, all of Whatcom County, is that, and I know it's cliche, but we're all in this together. And so, we all have our own self-interests, and I don't like wearing a mask because it's uncomfortable. I don't want to have to social distance because I want to be able to visit my friends, and I understand that I have those impulses myself, but I think that as a community, as a country, we're always better off when we work together on things. And so whether it's working together by wearing a mask and social distancing and not opening our store because we know it's the right thing to do, it's the right thing to do for our community. I think that we're better off when we do those things. Americans are very self-reliant, and sometimes that makes us kind of selfish. And I think that we're in a time in our history where we have to set aside that selfishness and think about what's best for our families, our neighbors, our communities, and our country. And sometimes that means we don't get to do exactly what we want to do. That means that we have to kind of set aside our own self-interest and think about the interest of the whole. And I think that's the one thing that I'd like to leave people with is you got to give to get. And I think that in this time, we need to give a little bit more of ourselves and set aside those selfish impulses.
Those are very wise words, my friend. Very wise words. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
How can people find out more about the city of Ferndale?
Well, of course, you can go to www.cityofferndale.org, and it has any and all the information you could possibly want about the city of Ferndale. We also have an amazing Facebook page and social media presence. In fact, Riley Sweeney, our communications director, is actually speaking at the Association of Washington Cities about the things that he does to engage people on social media because we've been so successful there. There's two great ways to kind of see what's going on in Ferndale and do a little bit of research about what this community is all about.
Wonderful. Greg, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for being part of our community. Thank you for doing what you do and being a leader. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time.
Absolutely. You be well.
Thank you.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed watching this episode of Bellingham Now. To see all of our episodes, go to BellinghamTonightShow.com. New content is added daily, so make sure you subscribe for updates. Thanks for watching.